Welcome back to another episode of Relative Talk. I'm your host, Jalma Loja. I'm with my sister, Theresa Young, for our first installment of Book Club. Theresa, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. I should note that with the first podcast we did, you were a bit surprised when it went on the internet. And then, because you said, "Oh, I thought this was just," she goes, "I was only doing this to make you feel better. That's why I was doing this podcast." I was like, "I
I didn't
just
think
did."
you were gonna send it to anyone.
Yeah, you're like, "I didn't think we are going to send it to anyone." And then I asked you, "Hey," or what I should have asked you was, "Hey, do you know what a podcast
I know what
is?"
podcast is. I just thought it was like a project for you, like a fun project.
Yeah, well, you were a little tipsy at Ribfest, and you confessed. You go, "I just did it because I thought it'd make you feel better," which is it is true. You know, I do like doing it, um, but I thought that was really funny. So you're a repeat guest, which is pretty great considering this is episode number 8.
I'm not the first repeat guest though.
You're not.
Let's
You're
just
not.
put it out there.
I know
Let's
that's
just
just
put it out there. We all know your favorite.
it's a source of contention. I'm not playing favorites here. That's not what it's about. Nick offers a sports factor that you don't have, but you have other facets of your personality and knowledge that are also interesting.
I could talk about the new play clock on baseball. How about that?
God, I've done like so many podcasts on that. What do you know about the new play clock?
That they have one and that it's going to bring people back to the game is what I know.
That they have one. They do have one, and it is helping.
It's going to take them away from football and back to baseball. You're welcome.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Football is so popular. They did their like version of Nielsen ratings, which are fairly outdated, but they track the viewership of what were the most watched things in the last year, and I think 18 of the top 20 things, which is NFL football games. Like,
That's not surprising.
By a large margin. Like it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen Oppenheimer yet?
No.
God.
Did you?
No. I was supposed to, but I didn't. But I recently saw Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. It was fine. Just like another Mission Impossible. Definitely a series.
They were saying Tom Cruise like saved the movie industry with that and Top Gun. It wasn't that good.
It was Top Gun saved the movie industry. It was not that great. It was kind of just action filled, something that Anna would enjoy. But we'll get to Anna in a second because that brings me to another topic that I have. But so for book club, we're going to talk about the books that we're reading. So I'm reading a book, you're reading a book, but since you're the guest, I would like you to go first and explain what you're reading, why, and what's interesting about it. Because you told me not to do any research on it, and I haven't.
I did? What did I say?
You told me not to look anything up.
Oh. Well, the book I read was called Outlive, and it's by Peter Attia. He's a doctor. He's kind of like a Renaissance man. He's a very, he sounds like a very intense person. He's done a lot of things for like very intensely for like a short period of time. Like he was a super competitive fighter. Then he got into like math and engineering. Then he went to medical school and got his residency. And he gets into things in like a really intense degree. And this book it's about longevity. It's called Outlive. And it kind of talks about the 4 main causes of death that come from disease that aren't like random, like a car accident or something, like the 4 disease type of death. The top 4.
That's a couple.
Go.
Heart disease, cardiovascular, and cancer.
Right. So heart disease, cancer.
Yep.
Neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. That's the 3rd category.
Yep.
And diabetes.
Interesting.
So
in that order?
Now I'm not sure about that order. I'm pretty sure Heart disease is number one, and I think cancer's number two.
Yeah, heart disease is
Sure.
heart disease is number one, definitely for men, for sure.
And so he talks about those four, and then like a kind of the first, and it's extremely well researched, well documented. It's a lot of the book is very technical, but he tries to weave like narrative in there as well. And so the first half of the book is kind of talking about why these things kill us and like the mechanisms through which they kill us. The second half of the book is kind of what you can do about it, and he gives. I wouldn't say any of the advice in there is earth shattering necessarily. It's not like, oh, I would have had no idea. A lot of it is diet, exercise, sleep. He does a big chapter on how your emotional, mental health can have a bigger physical impact on you than a lot of people would think. But what I find interesting is he's also very aware of like technology, and like I said, he used to be in like math and engineering, and it's almost like he prescribes all these things, but at the same time he's waiting to see what's going to happen in terms of like biohacking. And like the book is almost like this is all the diet, exercise things you have to do to stave off these diseases, and look how hard and particular it is. I'm really interested to see like what biohacking is going to do to actually fix this problem, because he's not like, oh, you should, eat a lot of protein, watch processed food. It's not even that simple. Because it's so well researched, it's incredibly specific, and you would basically need all of these very specific blood tests, genotype testing, like all these things done on yourself to know, like, are you the kind of person who should stave off carbs, or are you the kind of person where carbs actually really fuel you and you really need that? And so the answer essentially in his book is you would need a ton of very specific, very expensive, hard to find testing to know exactly what would work for you. And so my takeaway is kind of like, well, where are we on biohacking then? Because it seems a lot more plausible.
What do you mean by biohacking?
Like all those companies that are trying to go beyond what you can do with diet and exercise, like looking at things at like the DNA or intracellular level, things that like Neuralink is doing, Elon Musk's company, like that they're actually trying to do to change your actual molecular neurochemistry rather than just diet and exercise.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. How did you come upon that book? Like, what spawned it?
I was trying to remember that because I thought you might ask, and to be honest with you, I don't know. My TBR is pretty long, and I think it was just on there, and I think I just randomly picked it. So I don't remember like why I put it on there in the first place.
Why is that interesting to you?
I'll tell you, that's not my typical genre, but what was interesting to me is that this guy is incredibly detailed. He's very specific. It's really well researched. He has kind of a no BS approach to things, and I thought if this book is going to be from his perspective, I'd be interested in reading it. I also don't believe he's also doesn't have like a supplement line, that the whole book is basically trying to get you to buy. Like there didn't seem to be any other motivation behind it besides his own actual research, which is very well researched.
Does he run like a lab out of some university?
No, he does have a practice. I believe he lives in Austin, and he does have his own medical practice, so he has patients in Austin. But aside from that, he has a podcast too. It's called The Drive.
Okay.
He doesn't has a podcast too.
Doesn't have a podcast.
Well, yeah, only the best.
I also should have told you that not exactly an ideal spot for a podcast is doing it outside. Just a heads up.
My kids. Why is it loud?
There was a plane going over at one point.
You're probably going to hear like 20 wind chimes in a minute. But all my kids are home, and Ryan's home. I had to go outside. Anything could happen at any minute.
It's fine. It's fine. I can push through. I'm a professional, so
clearly
I'm used to all this craziness, live. Mm-hmm. So it's not a big deal. That's really interesting. I was actually going to ask you that telomere disorder book that you have.
Yes.
Can I have it back? Because
of course
I want to give it to doctors who come in the room, like when they're looking at Theo, because some of these people have no idea what this is and they've never heard of it before. It's just incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I want to give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that book is said like second edition, and I wish it was like the 35th edition.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it
Mm-hmm.
incredible that it's the second edition? Um,
Yes.
but yeah, it is, and I often think about it too. Like, my son has this genetic condition. It's pretty rare. It's like one in a million people. It's called DKC. Um, but like how, like 20, 40 years from now, they'll have like some sort of remedy that is pretty commonplace that if we knew at this time, we could have really helped Theo. You know what I mean? Like, we only know what we know thus far that research is telling us. And I bet in like 40 or 50 years, when he's an adult, he could have been like, man, I wish I had that when I was little. I could have really alleviated some of the issues.
Well, some of the biohacking stuff they're looking at is lengthening telomeres. That is,
Right.
it's like that's in the mix of all the things that they're looking at.
Right. Exactly. And that's part of the trial that he'll go under, is trying to lengthen those telomeres.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really interested and fascinated with what you're reading. It's so hard because it's my son. Like that telomere disorder book, like I wanted to dig into that so bad. But I have a very kind of active and creative mind, and more information isn't necessarily a good thing for me, because I'll read things and then I'll make connections that may not necessarily be there. Conan O'Brien talked about this one time. He goes, a creative mind, sometimes or doing comedy, it's thinking incorrectly. And I was never a great standardized test taker, really poor. And my grades got higher and higher in education. So like high school wasn't great, college, less standardized tests. And then grad school, even less, more papers and presentations. And my grades got better and better as the standardized tests started to diminish a little bit, and more emphasis was on papers and presentations. And Conan O'Brien talked about, he goes, well, the answer is obviously C, but if you have a creative mind, you could make a case as to why it could be A, C, and maybe B. And that's where I would struggle, because I could take a subject and be like, I could make a case for why all of these could be a possible answer. And with the case with my son, since a lot of this is unknown, the more stuff I read about it, it's not helpful to me to read that stuff. And I'm totally interested in it. And I oftentimes think, like, should I read it? And then I'm like, no, I should have my doctors read it and have them be well versed on everything, because a couple like nurses came in who worked on our team, like, and it's difficult because I can only talk to 3 people in the country about this that know about it, like our 2 lead doctors, and then that one doctor and his protege at Boston Children who I've never met. So there's like 4 people that even know what this thing is. So like every person coming in to look at Theo has just did a quick research about it, so no one knows what they're doing. It's crazy.
They probably have, like those nurses, they probably have like a compartmentalized task, like they're supposed to look at this one reading,
right,
but they probably don't have that full picture.
And there was this one kid. So Theo was getting just like an allergy test. They wanted to make sure he wasn't allergic to amoxicillin. Anything immunosuppressive, like we can't give him. We can't give him Motrin or a bunch of other stuff. But they really did not want him allergic to amoxicillin, because there were so many other antibiotics that they needed to give him that are related to that. So they because he got a rash when we gave it to him, and our doctors were like, we need to test him for that specifically. We need to know for sure, and he wasn't. But you administer that to him, and then you just wait around in the hospital for 4 to 5 hours to see if he has any allergic reaction. So they gave it to him. He's fine. He's not allergic. We're just hanging out, and some low-level kid comes in, some resident just being asked to come in and say, "Hey, I'm part of the allergy team." They have no idea who Theo is. They have no idea about his condition, and they're like, "Hey, we want him to be a part of this study for allergies." And I get, I get really angry because one, I'm tired of explaining this to people. Like I'm just so tired of explaining this thing. And I have to do it a lot because only 4 people really know what it is. And even they have to like meet before they meet with us. Like one time I went to get a snack before I met with our lead doctors. I don't know if I told you this, but I saw them, our 2 lead doctors, like working this plan out before they got to the parents. Because they always know more than we do. They're just trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way forward? And then how do we communicate this to these 2 parents? So I saw them in this little room, like prepping before they came in and talked to us. So it also shows you like how little, how much, like how obviously doctors know a lot, but how much they don't know. But anyway, this kid that came in, I ripped him a new one. This poor kid, because he's just being asked to do it, and I go, I don't think this is. I go, do you know what my son has? I go, I was like, have you been briefed? Like, I was like, what do you think he's in for? And he's like, well, he's getting allergy tests. I go, he has a very rare condition. He goes, oh, what's it called? I go, DKC. He goes, I've never heard of it. And I'm like, few have. I go, why don't you check with your superior and then come back? And then he came back. He goes, yeah, he wouldn't qualify for this. I go, yeah, I didn't think so. You know, and I was being kind because I wanted to tell him to get the fuck out of the room. Like if you don't know what's going on, do not come in this room. And I told this to this guy on my softball team. He has a young child also that's been going through leukemia. And I told him this story and I felt bad about it. I was like, I just tore this young resident a new one. I'm not proud of it. It's just I was angry. And he goes, don't feel bad about that. He goes, you have to be an advocate for your son. He goes, my son's 1 in 20,000. Yours son is 1 in a million. So he goes, they were fascinated with my son. They're going to be even more fascinated with your son. And we saw that through the diagnosis process. We had hematology, so many different types of people. They just want to know everything about. And I just don't want to rehash that story. He goes, be an advocate for that. Say, I want only these lead doctors in the room or nurses doing tests. I don't want anyone just hanging out there. Everyone that comes into this room needs to come in with a specific purpose. He goes, don't feel bad about that. You have to be an advocate. He goes, because they will bring in as many people as you will allow them. No one told me that. And after a while, I just had to tell some of these people just to get out. I only want these 2 doctors in there. So, but yeah, I mean, this book you're reading sounds super interesting. And my God, if they could biohack or figure out something that could help, that would be amazing.
I mean, they're making incredible strides with all of it. There was just something on 60 Minutes the other day. This isn't particularly related to like anti-aging or disease prevention, but it does speak to what they're able to do with a neuronal link that they weren't able to do before, where someone could think words. He was connected and he could think words and they'd appear on a screen.
That's amazing.
So no vocalization, no other input. He was directed to I think he was directed to ask for a search, and say like, try to find out what's the population of Bolivia or something like that. And he thought in his head, what's the population of Bolivia? And the results appeared on the screen. and that was all they did.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of one example, but I mean, there are a lot of they're getting a lot of VC startup cash for these. So it's kind of becoming like the new wave in Silicon Valley.
That's awesome.
It's really interesting, yeah. And the Neuralink stuff's really cool too.
Are you a fan of Elon Musk?
A fan. I can't. I mean, it's hard to. I can't. It's hard. You can't not be impressed with him.
I'm impressed by
Um,
him, but do you like him as a person? He's creating so much double work for me because he changed Twitter to
Twitter.
X. I
Yeah.
go, do you know the headache that I have now at work? Like we have to change we have so many web pages with that on it and the logo, and I'm like, it's going to be a massive undertaking. We've already started today.
Yeah, I'm not a Twitter user. I know a lot of his criticism has come from that. I guess what I think is probably the most impressive about him for me is, I mean, he's clearly a genius, but there's, you know, several geniuses out there like him. I think what makes him unique in terms of his genius is his ability to actually create, like put something into action and create a real business and a real product from that. So many times though people in those positions, you know, there end up being like a creative genius like behind the team. But for him to like say, I'm going to make an electric car and then go all the way to the point of actually having a successful electric car company, I think that's what sets him apart from some of the other really, really smart people who are out there. Is he also had, and I don't even know if business sense is the right word, but I think he had maybe like the editing to know what to say no to and what to focus on in order to like actually go all the way through and make a project, you know, and land on Mars and what he's doing with Neuralink. Like he has a capacity maybe to finish projects that I think is maybe even more rare.
Yeah, that's really cool. Sometimes it is the editing. It is the choices that people choose not to do that makes them really successful. That's what I'm reading in my book. So have you heard of Rick Rubin?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Okay. So he's like won several Grammys and have worked with Adele, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Slayer, Jay-Z. I mean, the biggest.
That's a spectrum, right?
He's worked with so many people. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like this guru, and I'm reading his book. It's called The Creative Act: A Way of Being, and it's about creativity, but it's also about kind of how to live your life. And there's so many great life lessons that it's so weird. Mom got me this book. Mom has bought me two books in my life that, and I don't even know how much she researches, but the first book she got me was probably not a lot, but it's so weird because the two books she's bought me have been the most impactful, I think, in my life. The first one was Live from New York, which is after I graduated college, which is the oral history of SNL. And I read that book, and literally every hero of mine, they were like, oh, I started in Chicago at Second City doing improv, Steve Carell, Tina Fey. And I'm like, oh, I read that book in like, it's a big book. I read it in like a day or two. I put it down, and I think I called you, and I was like, I'm doing this. Like, this is it. Like, this is the thing. I know it. I know. This is what I'm doing. It was so clear. And this book resonates with me in such a profound way.
This new one you're reading.
This new one I'm reading, Rick Rubin, the Creative Act: A Way of Being, and it took him 7 years to write. And it's really about creativity. And he was it, and I subsequently I watched an interview, 60 Minutes interview with Anderson Cooper, and he talking to Anderson Cooper. He goes, He goes, do you play an instrument? He goes, no. He goes, I don't know how to work a soundboard. I don't know how to do any of that. He goes, how do you do what you do? And he goes, because I'm decisive about what I like, and I'm decisive about what I don't like. He goes, I have really good taste. And you and I, we talk about it all the time. Like, taste is so important. Like, I think taste can tell you so much about a person. What type of movies they like, what type of music they like, what books they're reading. Um, I remember Tina Fey saying she liked comedy so much because she could, if someone laughed at something, she could understand, oh, this is their intellect level. She could immediately assess a person based off of like what they found funny. And she loved that. It was like almost like a cut to. Chris Rock said the same thing. He goes, comedians can cut to, they can meet somebody, talk to them for 5 seconds and be like, you are married, you're single, you're divorced, you live in an apartment, you live in a house, you have tons of stuff in your refrigerator, you have nothing in your refrigerator, you listen to this type of music. He goes, you just know.
This makes me worried about Ryan, considering his comedy preferences.
Yes. Well, he's got good taste. Don't worry about it. Anyone who likes I Think You Should Leave has great taste. But this book is amazing. And I wanted to share a couple clips that it's so weird. Yeah, I have some clips queued up. But it's weird because I've been reading this book. I don't know how this happened. I'm reading a paperback book. And I must be talking about it with Alex, and the algorithm is popping up on YouTube Shorts and TikTok. It's phenomenal.
That TikTok algorithm. That's no joke.
Crazy.
So Mom got you two of the most influential books in your life, and she will never hear you say that on this podcast.
And she hasn't read my own book, ironically. Well, right. She claims she has, but
no way.
We'll see. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, this is so high tech. I didn't know we could do clips.
Oh, yeah. Look at my algorithm history. We've got Marin in here, all this other stuff.
Yeah, that seems right.
All right.
Don't do things just because you think you're going to get something for it. That's not why we do things.
Yeah.
Do what's interesting to you. Follow what's interesting. Don't worry about the outcome.
Yeah.
We don't know. We can't predict the outcome. We can never predict the outcome. Follow your own inner guide. It directs us. It might not make sense. It might not make sense to us. Might not make sense to anyone else. Certainly won't make sense to anyone else. But it might not even make sense to us. And that's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself. Why is it telling you this? Why is it telling you this?
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And this is one of my favorite things. He talks about when you're creating something, think of the audience last. The audience always comes last, which seems counterintuitive because you're like, well, I'm making something for this person. But I thought this was like to put it this succinctly is just beautiful. And I wanted to share this real quick as far as like putting the audience last. Give me 1 second.
Are you doing another one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And the audience comes last, not because I don't care about them or I don't like them. In service to the audience, they have to come last. Yeah. The thing that the audience wants is the best thing they can get. If we're trying to make it for them, it won't be the best thing it can get. It'll water it down. The process of making something for someone else undermines it.
Right?
Yeah, I think it would just I feel like you can tell an audience, even a less than savvy audience can tell that when something just comes off as inauthentic or as fan service rather than someone's true creative process. I think you can immediately tell. Think about like Stranger Things, right? Think about that on paper. That if they were trying to appeal to a wide fan base, that season 1 would have been terrible. Everything that's great about it is because it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't try to. You know, I mean, you could say that you could think of 100 examples of that.
Totally. Yeah. And I sent these to Dad because Dad hated my book title.
You sent those 2 clips to Dad?
Yeah. I go, Mom gave me this book, and I go, this should explain my book. And like, I didn't write that for you or anybody. I wrote that for me. Like, I wrote
I
that.
think he knows that.
I wrote that for me, and that title is for me. It's not for anybody else. And this is the last. This is the last clip I'll play because I think it's this book is like, everything he's saying. I just totally agree with it. It's just really just very philosophical and impactful.
Next time I'm going to find clips.
Better.
I didn't know we could do this.
Positions or better final works. Understanding how you feel in the face of other voices without second guessing yourself is probably the single most important thing to practice as an artist, or skill set to develop as an artist, is to know how you feel and own your feelings. And the key to that is not, I know, so I know what's right for you. It doesn't work that way. It's just, I know for me. The reason I chose to be an artist is to demonstrate this is how I see it. If I'm undermining my taste for some commercial idea, it defeats the whole purpose of doing this. That's not what this process is about. This process is, I'm doing me and I'm showing you who I am, and you can like it or not, but either way, this is still how I see it.
Yeah.
And I think that even gets to what we were just talking about before, about what to say no to, about knowing what to say no to.
Right.
And like maybe in that first initial create, you don't edit yourself at all. You just let it go. You let everything come out, and then looking at it later, knowing like, okay, this is what this should, like, I see it now that it's all out in front of me. I see what it should be, and I see what I should say no to. I can't remember who said this. I think I've told you this before. It was someone from Apple. It was either Steve Jobs or Tim Cook or something said,
Well,
I'm proud.
I was going to say, so in regards to this, the consumer doesn't, Steve Jobs said, the consumer doesn't know what they want until you make it.
Right. And I can't remember which one of them said this, but they said, I'm as proud of the things we've said no to as the things we've worked on.
Yes.
I think it was one of them said that. And it's just about having, and I think it also, like when he was saying, you have to know yourself. Like, you have to know yourself to be able to get it out there, and then going back and looking at it and saying, okay, now I see what it is. And either this is just not it, or this is for another time, or
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of the process.
Yeah.
That's where the editor comes in.
In regards to editing, there's a couple great quotes. Well, one, Hemingway said, write drunk and edit sober, which is funny. But I think Picasso said, art is the elimination of the unnecessary. And that's really, there's so many things that I have seen that are like, oh, wow, this is really,
Say that again. Art is the elimination of the unnecessary?
Yes. Art is the elimination of the unnecessary. Picasso said that.
Oh.
And there's so much, like, I've seen so many things. I'm like, oh, this is great, but it's too long, or, it's like, that's like the difference between, oh, the movie was good versus like, this is a great movie. And the great movies have no fat on them. It's just every scene is great. Everything is moving the story along. It's adding something. A great movie, every scene is great. Almost, I would say 90 to 95% of them are great.
It's like when you watch something that's so good, it makes you feel bad. Like, that's how I felt when I watched that.
It happens all the time.
When I watched that episode of The Bear, you talked about that with your other podcast guests, I think. But when I watched that episode of The Bear, it was so good.
Are you referring to Fishes or Forks?
Fishes. I mean, Fishes.
I can't talk about Fishes. I've talked about it like 3 times already on this pod.
Well, not with me. I'm just going to say this. It was so good. It like caused me a little bit of pain
I know. It was
Because
amazing. It was like the
it
best.
was
It was like the
so,
best thing. It's probably the best thing I will see all year. Unless
that
Oppenheimer really rocks my world.
yeah, I haven't seen Oppenheimer, but that's how I know when something is really good is I watch it and it makes me feel a little bit guilty. It makes me feel like that is so good. I like I should have done that, even though I have nothing to do with TV or writing. It's an
Oh,
irrational thought, but that's how I
no,
feel.
that's not a rational thought for me. I think about that all the time. I
It
was,
just hits me like I felt bad when I watched it because it was so good.
I was, it killed me. I was listening to that interview with Mark Maron and Jim Gaffigan, that podcast I sent you, WTF. So he had Gaffigan. Gaffigan has a new special, but he was talking with Jim Gaffigan, and Jim Gaffigan's like, well, comedians, like, we don't want compliments. We just want laughs. And Maron goes, I'll take the compliments. I'll take them. And I remember I was like on the Peloton laughing so hard because I was like, I totally agree. Like,
I love him.
I'll take any compliment. Seth
One of my
Meyer.
one of my favorite Mark Maron things is when he talks about how sometimes he feels bad, he never made the choice to have kids or have a
Oh,
family,
you love this
and
joke.
he thinks about it sometimes, sometimes it gets to him, and then he'll be around his friends who have kids. He'll be like, I talked to them for 5 minutes, and he's like, and you know what? At the end, I'm like, thank you. I'm so happy with my life choices. Thank you so much. And obviously the way he says it is way funnier, but oh my God, it's so great because I totally believe him. I completely think he has all of these thoughts in that order. It's so funny.
Absolutely. Because I think the joke along the lines is like the other guy's like, I don't know, man. It's like one kid's cool, but the other kid's got this weird thing, and I don't know. Like they go, none of them seem happy, but he doesn't. He
said
doesn't
they'll be
understand.
yeah, and it's great. It's the greatest thing. I mean, like, yeah, like I don't have any time for myself, and like, I mean, I want to die, but like, no, you got to try it. It's great. It's great. I mean, I have no life of my own. I don't get to do anything I ever want to do, but I mean, you got to have kids. Like, it's so funny.
Yeah, and he's like so happy with himself. Like, God, I made the right choice.
And like we talked about his cats.
Oh yeah,
he just lives with his cats.
It's great. It's great.
I love it.
But yeah, so I love that book and I'm reading it, and it's phenomenal. It's a really great way of not caring about the outcome and just owning your feelings and doing that. And I feel like I was doing that before, but it just really made me feel better about the work that I've done. Sometimes it's not the right time for your art to be recognized. He goes, maybe it will later, or maybe it won't be, or maybe you'll do something else that will be, recognized. But he goes, so much of that is out of your control. He goes, I can't stress that enough. He goes, your job is just to own your feelings, do what's personal to you, do what you think is funny. Don't do it for anybody else. Do it for yourself, because that's the audience wants the best thing they can get. And the best thing they can get is something that you love, like that you like. I told you that great episode of Mad Men where it's like I think it's called The Suitcase, where the whole episode is Peggy Elizabeth, what's her name?
Moss.
Elizabeth Moss. And Don Draper, John Hamm are staying late trying to work on the Samsonite, campaign. And she's just like, they've been drinking and it's late. And she goes, how do you do this? Like, how are you so successful? How do you know what the client wants? Like, show me how you think. And he goes, ultimately, it has to be what you want. He goes, ultimately, it has to be what you want, because they can tell you things. There's things in the brief, but I mean, just like Steve Jobs said, the consumer doesn't know what they want until you make it. So it has to be something that you want, and you cannot sell it unless you totally 100% believe in it. And so this book is just phenomenal. It's just a great way of like, not just doing creative work, but really living your life and feeling really good about yourself. Like the only obligation you have is to do really personal work to the best of your ability. And then
Wasn't it? I think maybe I heard, I might be getting this wrong, but I think it was like Van Gogh didn't sell anything when he was alive, or certainly didn't receive anywhere near the kind of like, you know,
recognition.
notoriety he was until he was dead. Like just getting back to what you said, like about it being the right time,
Yeah.
you know. But I think that sounds a lot like your creative process. Like when I hear him describing, just kind of do what you feel, don't worry about an audience. Like when I've edited your things, like the screenplay or the book, that really reminds me of your process. I think you are writing for you. I think you are. I think it's a catharsis, and you're definitely writing for you. And I think that's what makes it good.
Yeah, that's probably why I like this book.
You saw a little parallel there.
This guy really knows what he's talking about.
This guy's thinking.
This guy's really smart. I mean, he's won several Grammys. He must be smart. I know it was stuff I was doing before, but it just really like, I don't know. Because sometimes I'm like, why isn't my book famous or whatever? And he's like, he goes, so much of that is out of your control. He goes, it's the universe. He goes, there's so many factors that play into success. So much of it is luck. So much of it is timing. He goes,
I think yours is only exposure.
Yeah. But he goes, your only job is to just keep putting out content that you feel strongly about. I got some criticism about my podcast from a couple family members. One being I talk over my guests, which that's a valid criticism. And my response to that was, I have no control over a lot of things at work. You know, when you work for a corporation, there's a lot of things you can't control. I have absolutely no control over my son's health at this point. So my book, my podcast, like, I appreciate the feedback, but I don't give a fuck.
You've gotten better. You've gotten better.
Sure, of course. And the more I do this, the more I will get better. It's like anything. It's reps. It's anything. I mean, sure, I do. Go ahead. I don't want to talk over my guest.
Well, I'm talking over you, actually. But you're also the only boy in the middle of 4 girls. So that might have something to try to get your voice heard there.
Also, no one is interested in me or anything I really have to say. I think, one, it's a byproduct of being part of a big family. I've talked about this, a million times, but no one's really interested, really, in my thoughts or opinion, mom included. It's amazing. I mean, I remember doing sketch shows and having parents fly in from like Philadelphia and Seattle to be like, oh my God, you know, Robert's in this sketch where he plays a pooping dog or whatever, you know? And they're like, John, where are your parents? I'm like, they're about an hour away, and there's no way they're coming to this show, because they just are not. They love me. They're just so uninterested in, you know, if Theo ever did anything creative, a recital, anything, I would be fascinated. I really, really would. And it's not that they don't love me. They're just so uninterested in what I have to say. They just don't care. Especially mom.
Say when they did come to see that one show. Say what mom and dad said at the end of the show.
Well, mom does this with my podcast. Mom will go walk past dad. Dad will be listening to it, and mom will be like, "He's still talking? Like, how long is this thing?" Mom is always interested in how long. Any of my
words. I had to turn it down before.
Yeah, that too. She's like, also, I think you and mom really don't understand what a podcast is, because her comment was, "He's still talking." I'm like, it is a podcast. So
I get what podcast. I just didn't think it was going to be broadcasted. I just thought it was like a little fun thing for you.
Again, I don't think you still understand the fundamental
No, say what
essence
they
of a
said
podcast.
when they went to go see your show in Chicago. Say what they said at the end of it.
Is this in the book?
It might be. Remember, Dad said, "Well, that was a lot of." Remember that?
Dad said, "Wow, this is an improv show, by the way, where everything is made up on the spot based off of a one-word suggestion for about 25 minutes." He goes, "Wow, that was a lot of ad-libbing." And then Mom said, "Whoa, that was long," and it was like 23 minutes.
And that was their critique after finally coming to see you.
You know, it never lands the way you want with them, which brings me to my next topic. So a really interesting topic was brought up at Ribfest, and I wanted to pose it to you because I think it's vastly interesting. Credit to Uncle Carrie who asked this question to me, which I thought was really interesting. So, would you be friends with the people in your immediate family, our immediate family, we're brother and sister, if you weren't related to them? Would you be friends, and I'm including mom and dad in this, would you be friends with the people in our immediate family if you weren't related to them? And I know I already answered this question, but I'll let you go first.
So you're asking me that?
I'm asking you that, and then I'm going to tell you my answers because I've already answered that question when I was asked at Ribfest this past weekend.
The short answer would be yes. Like no.
All of them?
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Because
mine was not that at all. I had very specific people.
No, I think, again, the short answer is yes, because once I know everybody, like if I knew everyone's personality, then absolutely yes, because I love everyone and I love being with everyone individually, hanging out with them. Absolutely.
I still think you're thinking that we're family, pretending that there's just random people that you met.
Right. So that's why I said short answer, because if I knew your personality, like I know you guys now, absolutely. Where I think it might get tricky is I think some of us would be faster friends than others. So, for example, if I met Rose on the street, I think she and I would click immediately.
You would find her fascinating.
I think Rose and I just would. Rose is so gregarious and open. And really the issue here is me. I'm not very social. I'm a very slow burn to be friends with. Like, people become friends with me very slowly. People only want to be friends with me like if they've known me for like a long time. I'm not like a quick, fast friend. But I think I would feel that way about Rose. I also think I would feel that way about Tina. I think Tina would make me laugh within 2 seconds of meeting her, and I would be like, I have to hear more from this person. Anna and I don't know that we would click immediately because I'm not great at initiating. And I don't think Anna would be immediately drawn to me. I think Anna and I would become friends if we were like in a group project together. If we had to like work on something for like a longer period of time, or we had some like drawn out thing we had to do together, I think we'd become friends, and I think we'd be great friends. But I think Anna and I just meeting each other, I don't know that she would love me. You know what I mean?
I feel like you're being really kind, and you're making cases for how you could be friends with these people, as opposed to like in reality, if they were strangers, would you become friends with them? So you didn't really answer the question. So you were trying to be kind again.
That's what I really think. Okay, like you and me. If you and me were sitting at a coffee shop and we didn't know each other,
you and me would be friends. You are what the. Let me know when you're done, and then I'll go.
Well, here's what I mean. I'm trying to think of like how we would connect. Like if you and me were sitting at a coffee shop, neither one of us would come up and talk to the other person. We would never do that. That's just not our personalities.
No.
So you and I would have to accidentally, I'd have to see you.
Forget the initiation. Let's just say you were matched. Forget the initiation, because I don't initiate. I'm also antisocial like you.
So I'm saying that's my problem.
Right,
yeah.
Me too. But take that out of it. Take that out of the equation. Okay. Just personality-wise, like, would you be friends with this person if you were initiated. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still say yes to everybody.
Okay, so because you're being nice and you're being PC and you want to make Dad happy, so
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
I'll give you the reality of the situation. So for me, you and I would be friends.
Yeah.
Because we have similar interests, similar temperament. You also find me interesting and funny, which is very important.
Hilarious.
And you're sarcastic, which I also think is funny. So I think you and I definitely would be friends. You know who also I think would be friends? Me and Mom. Mom and I would definitely be friends. Her and I could connect on a lot of different things and have similar feelings on a lot of different things. I think we like the same things. I think we would want to do the same things. And I think we'd be fine doing our own things. So I think you're a yes. Mom's a yes. Dad is tricky because I don't think Dad and I would be great friends. We could hang out in the same circle of friends, but one-on-one, we would not do well. Like, I don't think my type of humor, I think he would find weird and he really wouldn't understand, and he would probably call me weird to his jock friends behind my back. And
I could see,
but I think we could both get along. We're both affable enough to hang out in the same circles, and we could play sports together, those types of things. But to be like close friends, no, he doesn't. There's a fundamental level where he just doesn't understand me, which is okay.
I think that's fair. I think it's I see what you mean by that.
Okay, Maria is interesting also because I think Rose and I would be friends because I think deep down Rose does think I'm funny, but she can't accept it because I'm her brother. So I think Rose and I would definitely be friends if we could be friends right now if I wasn't her brother. The thing that's holding our relationship back is the fact that I'm her brother. Like, just
she said she could never watch this podcast because it would make her too uncomfortable.
Right.
Like, listening to you would make her too uncomfortable.
Of course, but if I wasn't her brother, she could listen to it. That's my point. That's exactly my point. So I think we would be friends, but we can't be because I'm her brother. So the answer to that is yes. Rose and I would definitely be friends. Christina, I don't think so. I don't think I think we try, but it just wouldn't work because I don't think she'd want to go into depth into some of the things that I'm interested in. Also, she would be too like, I want to do this now and I want to do this now, and I got to be like, hold on, there's too many things happening. Like, let's just do this one thing. And she'd be like, well, I'm kind of doing this right now, and I changed my mind, and I can't handle that. Like,
she can be tangential. I think though, Tina you can have a great conversation with Tina just because the way her mind works.
And
like no other person I've ever met, and it can be wildly entertaining.
Completely agree with that, but it takes work, and that work I don't want to do with a friend. I want it to be easy. So with you, it'd be easy. With Mom, it'd be easy. With Rose, it would be easy if I wasn't her brother. Dad, it's difficult. There'd be some blockage there. We could be affable together in a group setting, but one-on-one, we wouldn't be friends. And Christina would be too much work for me. I'd be like, I can't. I don't have time for this. But she is interesting, and we've had great conversations, but it takes work to get there, and I don't have time for that. Anna is a bona fide no. I would not be friends with Anna. I love her because she's my sister, but we don't have any similar interests. She is so not interested in my comedic exploits or my thoughts or anything. She doesn't find the things that I think are funny. She probably doesn't think I'm funny, which is totally fine. I mean, it's not fine. That's why we wouldn't be friends. But it's like if I met her randomly, we would not hang out. Like, there's no way. She would say, this is trying. This is why you do a podcast inside. She would say, wow, this guy's annoying and he's trying too hard. And I would say you're boring and you don't know anything that's funny. You know what I mean? Like, my humor is so lost on Anna and Dad. Definitely Anna. Dad a little bit because I have some sarcasm, but like the fact that Anna doesn't get I think you should leave, like she came up and specifically told me she hated that show, and I go, of course you do. Of course you do. This is exactly why we wouldn't be friends if we weren't related. And I think we're good friends because we're family, but if we're random people, there's no way we're friends. No way. She doesn't find anything that I have to say interesting or funny, and that is a fucking problem.
She and Dad do share a lot of similarities.
Oh my God. It has to be very like conventional. Like it can't be something weird or stupid. Like that just doesn't enter their brains. They can't comprehend that.
But okay, she liked like Arrested Development. She liked Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like she liked that kind of humor. I think You Should Leave is pretty niche. Let's be fair.
Oh God, they should put that in the Smithsonian every episode.
Well, I mean, maybe for different reasons, but yeah, maybe.
I gotta have Ryan on this pod.
He'll lose his job. No.
He was kind of worried about it when I did pose it to him. I was like, "Do you want to be on this pod?"
Every time he texts someone, I think he's going to lose his job.
No, he's fine. Except you got to tell him to stop sending me that TikTok of Al Pacino and that Dunkin' Donuts commercial, like from that movie. I can't keep watching it, and he keeps forgetting that he sends it to me.
I don't think he forgets. I just think he sees it and thinks it's funny again and sends it again. I think is what's happening there. Yeah.
Well, this has been a great first installment of Book Club. I hope to do many more as a repeat guest, which you will be. I just want to make it clear. I love my sister Anna. If we were strangers, we just don't have a lot in common, and she doesn't think I'm funny. So that's a problem.
So would Anna be a podcast guest then?
No. At no point have I ever thought about bringing Anna as a podcast guest.
Well, now that I know we can do clips, that's good to know. I'm gonna find some clips next time.
Okay, cool.
We're so high tech.
But
you forgot to say. You forgot to say the podcast. I will. I'll send them to you ahead of time. You forgot to say who's sponsoring this podcast, John.
Oh my God!
Him here.
That's the most important part about the podcast. Even though I've referenced it 8 times already. Normally we do this at the beginning of the pod, but since it's the first installment of the book club, it's very apropos that I'll close with it. This podcast is sponsored by the incredible book Shitty Jobs, The Guide to Surviving a Recession. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, basically anywhere you get books. It has a 5-star rating, at least at this point that I'm aware of. And hopefully it's over $5 per purchase, because at one point it was $3.78. So let's try to get that higher, people. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Thanks everyone for listening. Theresa, any last words?
No. Thanks for having me on.
It was a pleasure as always. Thanks, everyone. Bye.